Welcome everyone. I'm going to share my screen, and as we go through this quick presentation and hopefully can provide some insight into IT to maybe help you on your journey to get started, and also, answer any questions that you may have during my presentation. But feel free to have your questions ready for once the presentation is over, and I'll do my best to answer them once it's finished. Now, if you all can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Now, today's presentation is on how do I become an IT professional? It's a great question. And if you're asking this question, you're asking it at a perfect time. IT right now has so many opportunities, from being a programmer to getting into coding, a data analyst, network engineer, systems engineer. There's so many different opportunities to be in IT, not just as a business owner, but as an app developer, as an employee for, let's say, Amazon, Cisco, which is my employer. There's a million opportunities out there, and the demand is only getting larger in the field. Now, today's agenda is going to start out with a little about me, so you understand my background and how I got in IT. And then we'll also talk about my profession of how I got started in IT. And then we'll move on to some job roles that are available in the industry that I've actually held. I'll give you a quick description and breakdown of each. And then we'll move on, and I'll provide some tips on how you can get started as an IT professional as well. And then we'll close it out for questions. Now, who I am. I'm an Air Force veteran. I am from Kenton, Ohio. I played high school at Camp McKinley, and I won a state championship while in high school playing football. I'm an IT technical leader. I'm a tech mentor, motivator, and teacher. I love helping people get started in tech. And I'm also a YouTube content creator. I do a lot of my giving back on YouTube through content around how to get started with IT, different IT certifications, as well as providing insights from my experiences in the industry. And I'm a lifelong learner. If you love to learn new things, you already have a head start in this industry. Now, when we talk about how I got started in IT, or how I became an IT professional, I mentioned that I'm from Canton, Ohio, which is kind of a small town. And while growing up in Canton, I didn't have any money for college. And in my city, there were very few options because there were very few jobs and not much opportunity. So I decided to go to the Air Force, and that's actually how I got my start in tech. But the thing about that is I spent about, 10 years of my career in tech, but I looked at it as a job. I never really looked at it as a career until I got older, I got a family. And then at that point, I realized that, okay, maybe I need to take my career as a profession. And so I started getting certifications, and I also got my college degree and really dove into the IT industry. And so at that point is when I started to give back, because I saw the opportunities that were available, and I knew that I could help others do the same. Excuse me. Now, some IT job roles that I've held in the industry, it's going to be the help desk and desk side support. Now, this is mainly like an entry-level field. On this role, you will do customer service around IT support for computers, laptops, printers, Wi-Fi, internet connections. If you are interested in tinkering and learning something new and working with people, getting your start on the help desk is a great start, because not only do you get to work with people and provide awesome customer service, but you also get your hands on computer systems and learning the ins and outs of the industry. The second role that I've had was a network technician. At this role, you provide support for IT organizations at the network layer. And this layer is where all of the magic happens for customers and businesses to get on the internet and to be able to do their job on their computers and connect with different email systems, internet services. It's really fun, but you're providing that basic level of support for the cabling, you're supporting network engineers. And I really enjoyed this, and I got a lot of hands-on experience in this role. The next role that I held was a systems administrator. Now, this role is around services and services. When you go to a web page like Google, or you go to ESPN or another like Linda Hall Library, you go to their website, these are all operating on either a container or a server, and there has to be somebody that sets these systems up and supports these systems. That's going to be your system administrator. Now, this is kind of migrating to like a cloud engineer these days, but system administrators are still around. When you think of Windows servers, that's the people that actually maintain those Windows and Linux systems. Next, this is one of my favorite roles and what I'm most passionate about, and that's network engineer. When I mentioned connecting to the internet, we are the highway supporters and providers and designers of the internet. We ensure that you can connect to Google, connect to ESPN, and ensure that you're able to do your jobs with no interruptions. We are the backbone of the internet. I am so passionate about network engineering, and that's also a way, the time that I got started with coding, doing Python scripts and things like that. I really enjoyed it. I'm very passionate about that. And it actually would help me get into the position that I am in now, which is a developer advocate. And as a developer advocate, my role now is to help network engineers and software developers have the tools to be able to do their jobs more efficiently. And I'll also talk about different code samples. I really enjoy what I do now. So if you all have questions about that, please feel free to ask. Now, when we talk about how to become an IT professional, this is a great question. It's a great question. And I think if you're curious about IT, my goal is to give you these tips to help you get started and find a plan and design a plan to be successful in this industry. So let's start with the first one. The first thing you have to do is determine your path. Now, you may be wondering, how do I determine my path? Well, if you are curious, or if you want to be curious about tech, I suggest using Google, YouTube, and finding people that are in the industry so you can determine what your interests are in tech, whether it's software development, web development, network engineering, system administration. Maybe you're interested in the cloud. Maybe you like computers. Maybe you like data science. There's so many different areas. Maybe you want to develop a mobile app. Finding out what you're curious in and what you're interested in. And then once you establish that, now, number two, you establish a plan. How are you going to get to where you want to be? How are you going to become that app developer? And to do this, my suggestion is to find a mentor. Now, this may be hard. I know coming from where I'm from in Canton, Ohio, finding a mentor in tech was pretty much impossible because nobody that looked like me was in the tech industry in my neighborhood. Well, in 2021, we are blessed to have the internet, and there's so many different social media platforms where you can find people that are doing what you want to do. And most of them that I know and have met are very happy to help people get started and design a path and plan to get to where they want to be. Use your resources. And we'll talk more about that here in a moment. Now, once you establish a plan, the next thing you have to do is get the skills and get educated. Now, education is a lifelong journey, not just in tech, but just in general. So when we talk about education in IT, you don't have to go to college. I'm just being honest. College is an option, but in IT, you have something called IT certifications. And no matter what industry you want to be in, whether it's a software developer, network engineer, system administration, there are IT certifications around that industry that if you study, which you can be self-taught, you can go to college for these IT certifications, you can go to boot camps for these certifications, but once you achieve them, now you are qualified for a job. It doesn't mean you'll get your first job that you interview for, but you have something that's certifying you in your abilities to be able to do a job at a specific level. So my recommendation is, if you're interested in college, that's awesome. But if you're interested in getting in IT certifications are a great option. Now, I'm not saying don't go to college. Once you get in the industry, a lot of companies will pay for your college degree. So my recommendation is that if you have the ability to either self-study, go to a boot camp, or find another online training for a certification, do that. And then if you're interested in college, find an organization to work for it and let them pay for your college degree. Now, once you get your IT certification, the next thing you need to do, number 4, build your resume. It is so important to note and document the things that you're learning, the certifications that you achieve, the jobs that you are working on. Put all of that on your resume and put yourself out there, because your resume doesn't start by the job. By the time you get a job, your resume starts now. The things that you are learning, those are skills that you are obtaining, and you can add to your resume. Because once you get that together, now you are able to tell an organization that I'm interested in being IT and I want you to hire me. Now, lastly, number 5, we're going to talk about social media. This is something that it took me a while to understand, but social media is great for connecting with our friends. It's great for sharing our experiences online, but you can use social media to your advantage. And what I mean by that is, if you want to be an IT professional, you can start sharing the things that you're learning on your social media, as well as sharing your certifications that you're achieving, sharing your code samples, and sharing the articles that you're reading around tech. And now you're building an online resume. So when people Google you, they can see exactly what you're about. Use social media to your advantage. Connect with people that are in the industry that are doing exactly what you desire to do. And once you do that, now you're building a network. So, for example, I have helped several people in IT get IT jobs with no certifications and no degrees and no experience, just by leveraging my network. Someone tells me exactly what they want to do. We connect on LinkedIn. I ask them to write up a quick article or a quick post about what they want to do in IT, why they're passionate about it, and then I share it out. You never know who sees your post and wants to help you get to where you want to be. So use social media to your advantage. Now, the last thing that I want to share out before we open up for discussion is going to be around my social media and resources. The first link is going to be links to all of my social media platforms, whether it's Twitter, YouTube, articles, and blog posts that I've written. There's some helpful information in this link. So please feel free, connect with me on LinkedIn, and if I can help you, I'll be glad to. The next thing is around finding your path. I mentioned that there are IT certification organizations, as well as finding your path. Well, CompTIA.org is an organization that does certifications, provides training, as well as some great articles around IT. And the link that we're sharing here has a link to different IT career fields to help answer the questions that you may have about, okay, what are some job titles? What are the job descriptions of those job titles, as well as what certifications align with these job titles? The next link is going to be Learn to Code. If you're interested in coding, I highly suggest to get started now. Don't wait on college. Don't wait on boot camps. Don't wait on anything. This link for freecodecamp.com has coding tutorials and classes that you can go to for free. Take advantage of it. Lastly, general training. Udemy is a great resource for getting started with any kind of training, honestly, but a lot of IT training is on Udemy. And for about $10 a course, great resource. I said lastly, but we got two more. The next one is going to be, if you're interested in network engineering skills, here's a link to cisco.com and all of the certifications around Cisco. There's so many articles, posts. I got posts on there. There's so much information around networking and the different subfields in networking that if you're curious about getting started with network engineering, this is the perfect link. Now, lastly, IT is really shifting. Before, everybody owned a computer, everybody owned servers. Organizations would invest large amounts of money in having what you call a data center to house all of their information in one location or multiple locations. Now, companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google are offering what you call cloud services. And so the industry is now having jobs available around supporting those cloud services for jobs like cloud engineers, DevOps engineers, and etc. So here's a link to AWS at Amazon to where you can get started with cloud skills. And now we'll open it up for questions.
That was awesome, as always, Duan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Stop sharing.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. So yeah, as Duan said, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A chat box or in the comments section on Facebook, and we'll get to as many of them as we can for the remainder of the hour. One of the first questions, which they actually chatted back and said that you went ahead and answered it, but I think I'm going to expand on their question a little bit. So Brandon asked, do you think a bachelor's degree is necessary, or will certs be sufficient in being successful in IT, which you did already answer. But I guess what my question would be is, can you talk a little bit more first specifically about those certifications, what those are, what the process is like achieving those, and then from there, you know, as you mentioned, pursuing a bachelor's degree or further college from there, when that will benefit somebody. So the first part of the question, can you talk more about the certifications, like give us a sampling of what those are and what it's like to work for those?
Okay, so I'll start with the certifications. For example, I love network engineering. I'm a network engineer. If you want to be a network engineer, there's a certification called the CCNA, which is the Cisco Certified Network Associate Certification. This certification focuses on teaching you everything that you need to know to get started with network engineering, from understanding how networks work, from understanding how routers and devices in the network work, how to deploy those devices in the network. It teaches you everything to be able to walk into a job and get started with network engineering. Now, this certification only focuses on that aspect of being in IT. When we talk about being an IT professional, there's many other pieces that come together to help you be a true professional. And so learning those skills, college is something that can really help you do that. Because in college, you learn how to write business plans, how to write professionally, how to read better, how to communicate, work with people, how to public speak, math, and all of these different things that college teaches you to help you be a better professional, whether it's in business, computer science. College teaches you that aspect. So it depends on what you want to do. If you feel that you have all those soft skills and intangibles to get started, which I believe you probably do have a lot to get started, because once you get in the industry, you'll pick up a lot of those skills. But let's say you want to get in management or you want to own your own business. College will be another tool that you can add to your tool belt to help you get in that management lane, to help you get started with business, and also to help you in leadership.
That makes sense. Is there ever a time when a graduate degree is helpful in IT? So I know you said if you want to get into management roles, that's when, you know, a bachelor's degree would be helpful. Is there ever a time when a graduate degree would help, you know, help in your career path?
I think like in computer science and programming and data science, those are some really complex knowledge levels and domains. So at that point, there are people that go for their graduates and doctorates in
Oh,
those
wow.
areas, because you have to think about it. To really understand data science, you have to be great with databases. You have to really understand math. And so you have to continue learning. And so if you continue advancing in your learning, eventually what comes with it is going to be a doctorate or master's, whatever you need to get that level of knowledge and validate it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So with back to those certifications, whether you teach yourself or you go to college or you go to a boot camp, what is it like obtaining those certifications after you've studied? And do those cost money? Do those, what is it, like a long test? Like, how does that work?
I'll give you an example. I like to stick with the CCNA because that's one of my favorite. So when I took the CCNA, the cost was $300 for this certification. Now you think about $300, that's a lot of money. But if you get the CCNA certifications, chances are your first job, you'll start out at like 50,000, maybe even more than that. I've seen people start at like 70,000 just off a $300 certification. By
Wow.
investing this amount of money and time. I don't know people that come out of college that don't achieve, $60,000, $70,000, but from this certification, the amount of time, effort, and dedication you put into it can truly pay off. Now, when we talk about the experience of the certification, the cost is one thing, but then the amount of time. These certifications are not easy. They're designed to really not only test your knowledge, but to teach you the skills that you need to do the job. And that requires in-depth focus. And so if you don't have any background in network engineering, now you're learning something totally new that can be like trying to ride a bike for the first time. If you've never ridden a bike, you'll fall off, you'll get frustrated, you'll want to quit. But the goal is to take it one day at a time, one subject at a time, stick with it, and eventually you'll get into that certification exam, which can be about 50, 60, 100 questions, multiple choice, or there can be some dynamic questions to where you actually have to do a lab environment or something like that. And once you get into it, you have the knowledge that you need, you can pass it.
Gotcha. I think that was really helpful because I think, if people have never taken a certification for any field before, sometimes it's like, if I take a class or if I learn how to do something, do I just get a piece of paper or how does that work? So I think knowing that going into it, being able to mentally prepare will be really helpful for a lot of people. So Brandon says, hey, Dwan, I follow you on Twitter. Sup, my guy. Do you feel it's necessary to understand and utilize software engineering and software development to become a successful network engineer?
That's a great question. And that's actually that's actually where we are right now in the industry. So if someone's a network engineer and they're thinking about how to advance their careers, learning software development and software engineering is truly helpful, because when you think, and for those of you that don't understand network engineering, let's put it this way. Traditional network engineers operate on a device one by one, right? And so if you have 100 devices that you have to, let's say, change a password on, you do that one by one, that could take days, that could take weeks. Well, now network engineers are learning software development skills to where they write Python scripts or some type of automation to now I take the time to write this code, and then I execute that code on those hundreds of devices. And now what used to take me weeks or days can now take minutes or hours. And so when I look at the industry in network engineering, I believe adding those software development skills will not only make your life and job easier, but it adds a ton of value to your resume and to your organization. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I've heard before, and I don't necessarily know what all these mean, but Python, Scrum, Agile. There's so many different. And are those also different types of like languages, or what are the different types of languages that people can learn?
Okay, so when we talk about Python is a software development language. It's object-oriented. It's really easy to learn because it's like line by line execution. Now, there are other languages like JavaScript, which is for like front-end development. And then there's C++, which is often used to develop games and things like that. There's a ton of languages out there. Now, when you talk about Agile and Scrum, those are going to be processes or a process to for organizations to use to develop code.
Okay.
We will use an agile process to say, okay, we want to develop this really large project, but we're going to break it down to smaller pieces, and then we'll work on those smaller pieces every week. And so the process is agile, and then the scrums is the meetings that you have to ensure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do in that agile process.
I'm with you, kind of, if I'm honest. I think that's the really cool thing about the tech world and the IT world is that I think, you know, the general engagement that people have with it are like help desk, like you were talking about, of like, hey, something's wrong with my printer, my computer isn't working right. Well, did you turn it off? Did you turn it back on? That sort of thing. But there is so many layers to what it takes for all of these systems, for our Zoom, for everything to run smoothly. And it's so interesting to me. There's so much to learn. So I don't know if everyone saw or not, but the links that Dewan shared on his PowerPoint, I put in the chat. Lots of great resources there. I highly recommend following him on all of his platforms. And because like he said, you know, there's a lot to learn here and he's trying to help people learn it. So I highly recommend saving those links that I shared. Yeah. So I have another question from JMAD. It says, I'm 41 years old trying to get into IT. Is it realistic? Do you think there is a realistic opportunity for a person in their 40s without experience or a mentor? I think this is a great question.
That is a great question. Yes, you can get in IT. Are you too old? No. Now there may be some other factors that can make it more challenging than others depending on the person. Now, on my YouTube channel, I did an interview at the end of the year with my mentor, Mr. Dennis Bates. Mr. Dennis Bates was a truck driver, right? He didn't get in IT until the age of 39. I think at 39, he got his CCNA. So at 41, I believe it's still possible because he didn't get his CCIE until I think like mid 40s, he got his CCIE, which is the top level network engineering certification. So for you at 41, the goal for you, in my opinion, is going to be finding exactly what you want to do and be dedicated to that. Like for someone that's 18, you don't have as much time to be curious. The more focus that you can put on that one thing that you want to be really good at or great at, the more focus that you can put on, the more time you can dedicate to it, the more consistent you can be to learning that thing. Then now we're talking about you can be as successful as you want to be. But it's going to take, okay, where do you want to go? I want to be a network engineer. Awesome. Let me get my CCNA. Focus all your time and energy on the CCNA. Now get a job, focus on being the best you can be in that job, finding a mentor to help even narrow your focus to have that tunnel vision, and then you can go as far as you want to go.
Yeah, I think so. What I'm hearing is that what, you know, especially when you're, you know, older or you're changing careers later on in life, you know, I think that's great advice to go, okay, I kind of need to find my niche and I need to figure out how to then set myself apart, right? How do I build my toolbox to show, like you said, I am an expert in this thing. Yeah. I think that's awesome advice. So earlier you mentioned that you were an Air Force veteran, and can you talk more about, you know, was the military, did it give you IT training specifically? If so, do you feel like that was a replacement for certifications at all?
So the military was a great, I would say, stepping stone for me in my career. You know, it helped me not only learn IT, because that was what I did. I was a computer operator in the Air Force, but it also helped me to grow up and understand things about life. It taught me a lot. So through that experience, I learned IT skills there. I got started by doing the help desk in the Air Force. Then I did servers, system administration. I learned some networking. I got exposed to so much in the military. And the great thing about going to the Air Force for me was that all of this training was for free and I got paid. Like, granted, I went to war and I could have died, but, you know, I made it through it, thankfully, you know, all in one piece. Others don't. And, you know, I always give my condolences and thank everybody for their service, because I lost friends in the service. But I was able to make it through it. And now, from that experience, I try to help others and give back because the military was a blessing for me.
Yeah. And thank you for your service, and anyone else that's watching, if you're a veteran, thank you for your service. We all definitely appreciate what the sacrifices y'all have made for us.
And if there are any veterans, viewing this video, there are so many free resources around training for veterans to get certifications to get in IT. And then also just to get started in IT, there's companies like Cisco, Amazon, Google that work hard to hire veterans. There's programs to get you in the door. So if you're used to Google searching, there are resources out there. I write blog posts and have made several videos around these resources. And if you have questions about them, feel free to contact me.
That's awesome. So someone asked, you mentioned self-studying. How do you self-study, and how do you know when you're proficient in a skill when you've studied on your own? The last thing you would want to happen is to get a job based on your skills you thought you knew, only to find out that you were only on the tip of the iceberg. That's a great question, because you can definitely, work into your career on your own. And like you said, you can self-study, but without the tests that you normally get in school to show you where you're landing at, I can see how that could be difficult. So what advice do you give for that?
So when it comes to self-study, you're studying to get a job or to get a certification, but the best teacher is going to be experienced. So I wouldn't expect to do this certification and be able to walk in the door and know exactly what the industry is like. You're going to get experience to learn that part. But when it comes to self-study, the way that I understand knowledge from things that I don't understand or don't know is each certification exam that you prepare for is going to have what you call exam topics. Each exam topic, or each section of the exam topic, is broken down to subtopics that you can study and prepare for. And so the way I go about knowing that I'm ready for a certification exam is by, when I go to an exam topic, if I can explain it, I'm ready. If I can't, I need to study it more.
That's a good way to gauge. Is there also, you mentioned experience is one of the best ways to learn. Our intern, and I apologize if you talked about or touched on this in the beginning, but internships, is that something that is offered in the IT field? And if so, how do you go about finding those?
Internships are huge as well. You can find them. I know Google was doing like a big internship for minorities specifically. In most organizations, Cerner, they do internships. There's so many organizations that do internships around IT that just a simple Google search or going to a company that you're interested in and checking their career section and looking for internship jobs. Even the government does like internship jobs. So if there's something that you're interested in, just search it online, contact me. And I know a few other people that focus on getting people hired. I'll do my best to share out that information.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let me see what other questions we have. I have multiple screens of questions, so I apologize everyone for me looking away.
It's okay.
Let's get back. I know you talked about soft skills some, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't think about that when they're thinking about any career path, really, because like you said, part of the way that traditional college is designed is to sort of teach you those along the way, but you may not be actively aware that they're teaching you those skills. So can you talk more about the soft skills that are important? I know it'll vary depending on the specific role you take in IT, but can you touch on that a little bit more about what soft skills are important and why?
I think a major soft skill in IT is going to be active listening. That's something that can really help you, especially like in those help desk positions. If someone calls you, says my internet were not working, rather than assuming, listening to actually what the problem is, asking questions, being curious, and being able to communicate, have patience, and having empathy with the customer that you're working with, because they could have a really bad day. They could have a deadline that's really due, and you, rather than just saying, well, I'll fix it and get back to you, and you never get back to them. Those are skills that you really have to learn to say, okay, what is your problem? Mm-hmm. They address the problem, you listen to the problem, And then if you know an issue is there, then you can say, okay, let's try this. So being able to actively listen to the customer, communicate with the customer, have empathy, and then, learning how to write emails and different things like that to effectively communicate. Public speaking is one of those things that if you join like Toastmasters, it can really help you, because public speaking isn't always about, these webinars and things like that. Sometimes just standard customer service with a customer, or being able to communicate a problem or issue or solution to your manager or your team, learning all of those skills to not only be able to speak it, but being able to write it. So I think effective communication, active listening, those are two major skills that we need in empathy, three major skills that we need in IT.
I love you adding empathy. I think we asked this question on every How Do I Become, and I'm not sure anyone has ever said empathy. And that is so important in so many jobs. And like you said, especially in customer facing jobs like this, because your customers aren't just like, I think people typically think of customers as if you work in a store and someone that comes in and buys something, but your customers, as especially in fields like IT, are your coworkers, they're your management, they're, it can be actual customers that are maybe, if you work for like Comcast or something, that they are actually customers that are buying the internet. So when we talk about customers, it's really wide ranging. And so having empathy, like you said, for if your coworker is having a stressful day and they have a timeline and the internet's down and they have to get something sent, that's so important. Thank you for including that. I think I couldn't agree more. and all jobs, I think. Let's see, what other questions do we have? What is the interview process like for IT jobs, and how do you recommend preparing for those? Because I imagine they would be different than a traditional, I'm sure there's still the conversation part of the interview, but what else do you need to be able to do or be prepared to do for your interview?
So for an IT interview, especially entry level, they're going to test your experience, your knowledge level. They want to know, can you do the job? The second piece that they're going to test you for is, how are you when you are under stress? Like, how do you deal with difficult situations? The third thing they're going to test you with, if you're in a team environment, is how do you work with others? And then they're going to test you to see how bad you want the job, to see if you're interested and serious about your career. Do you take your career serious? So those are like 4 areas that you get tested on in an interview process, and they can be challenging. But my recommendation when you're applying for a job is to look at the job description, see exactly what you're going to be doing, and being able to talk about those things that you have experience in. The things you have no experience in, you can't talk about those. So there's really no point. But if it's on your resume, be able to communicate that effectively in an interview to say, okay, I've worked on routers. Here's what I know about routers. And here's my experience in the industry with working on routers.
Will they ever have you like simulate code, or will they ever give you like a test where it's like, okay, this is the simulation, we want you to complete a certain process? Does that ever happen in interviews?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I've been just being totally transparent. When the pandemic first happened, I interviewed for Google. I didn't get the job. It happens. But I interviewed for Google, and they kind of had me whiteboard a session to write out. First, I had an interview that was based on strictly code, my code knowledge. And then I had a whiteboard session that was strictly on networking, to be able to whiteboard problems to see not only can I talk about things that I know, but can I effectively explain the things that I know, and also relate them to what I've actually done in the workforce. There's a method out there, I think it's called the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, and results. So being able to provide a situation, tell a story, things you've done, and then what you were tasked in that situation. So if the task was the internet was down or the computer was broken, and then the actions that you took in that to resolve that situation, and then the results or the impact once you took those actions. So there's a method out there that you can research, the STAR method, that'll really help you in your interview process.
That's really helpful. I had never heard of that method before. I'm gonna have to look that up. That's really cool. Let's see. Someone asked, and I feel like they already know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask it. They said, "Why would I hate Agile and Scrum?"
Why would you hate Agile and Scrum? I think the daily stand-ups from Scrum, or weekly, depending on how you do your scrums, that part would be annoying. Other
So
than
what
that,
is that? When you say stand-ups, can you explain what that is?
so you'll have a board, and the board will have to do, in progress, and done. And everybody will have something that they're working on. Let's just say my job this week is to work on the internet. I'm fixing the internet. I'm either to do, which I haven't started it, or it's in progress. And so at the Scrum, we communicate where I'm at on my task or on my project. And then the Scrum Master will make sure that everything's moving to the right of that board. And so that, if you're doing that daily, or that can be something that someone may not enjoy. And then Agile can really get to a point to where, depending on the velocity of your iteration and how much work you have to deliver in that small amount of time, that can be intense. And so that can be difficult, but it's a part of understanding what you can deliver and not over deliver or over committing to something that you are going to under deliver. So knowing exactly what you can deliver in those increments, and can make Agile really efficient to a business delivering their products.
Gotcha. So earlier, I believe this question is related back to something you mentioned towards the beginning of your presentation about being a cloud engineer, and how that is, I think what you said was that network engineers are transitioning. Is that correct? Or am I confusing that with another job? Can you explain what a cloud engineer is and kind of just describe that a little bit more of what you were talking about earlier?
So I have a high level overview of a cloud engineer, because I've never really done a job.
Okay.
But essentially, I guess I'll give you an analogy. Where's my laptop? Okay, so I have this laptop, a physical laptop that I hold all my data on. Well, let's say my laptop breaks. All my data is gone and I need a new laptop. Well, what the cloud essentially does, it gives me a computer that I have a computer that I can work on, but my data actually sits with Google or Amazon or another organization, right? And so what a cloud engineer does is they actually support the services, the systems that are in the cloud. They're the ones that ensure that that works, and that an organization, like let's say my company, Dwan.com or something, that I can have all the services that I need that host in this cloud organization. So a cloud engineer is basically taking the role from a traditional system administrator that would support the data that's on my computer locally, and now they're going to do the work in the cloud rather than local at a company.
Gotcha. That totally, because when you said it, and I forgot, I couldn't remember if you'd said it was the network engineer or the systems administrator, but that makes sense. And I wondered that too, of so wait, so what is this other job, and what is, so that totally, I appreciate the explanation on that.
No problem.
Let's see. Someone asked, how do I select the right college or training program for me? And if I could sort of jump in on this a little bit, is I wonder if a part of it, and you can answer this, is how much time you got. And, how much time do you have to spend? How quickly do you want to get into a career? Is that correct? Is that one of the ways you should go about selecting a college or a training program?
So I think there's several factors to this. So when we talk about colleges and training programs, I got a daughter in college, right? And she decided to go to college in another state, which is way more expensive, when she could have went locally, which is a lot cheaper, and got the same degree. So, being a dad that has, expenses, going to a cheaper local college makes more sense for me. But at the same time, if you want to be a lawyer and you go to Harvard or Yale and you get your degree, getting a degree from there is going to have way more value on your resume and create more connections in your network. So I think doing the research on the college, first, doing the research on the field that you want to get educated in. Second, researching colleges and training organizations that offer the training that you need or the degree that you desire, researching them by first going to their website and showing that they're legit. Second, Google them to check the reviews, and then asking people that have gone to these organizations, and then seeing the value and impact they've had on people that have graduated from the college or the boot camp. Because it may have a really good name, but it may have not good, a percentage that's not good of getting people hired. So you want to go somewhere that is going to help you not only while you're in the program, but get you hired, get you jobs. I mean, I can speak for one of my self-centric training. It's expensive, but even today I could call them and ask them for help, and they will help me. So I think finding someone that really cares about your success is the way to go. Yeah,
I that totally makes sense. I think, when my husband went to a training program in a different field in drafting. And I think one of the misconceptions about some of these shorter certification programs is that they're going to be easier. And just because they're shorter, because they're not necessarily 4 years, and maybe they might be 18 months or something like that. And I think the thing to understand too is that they're still challenging. And so it's challenging just in a shorter amount of time. And so can you talk about that a little bit more too, of like sort of what to expect going into a training program like that, of like the time commitment of not just going to class, but studying and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it can be really challenging depending on the program that you go into. If you have, let's say, 18 weeks of information that they cram into 2 weeks or a month. So that's going to be intense. If you're working full time and you're going to this class at night, or even if you're in this class full time during the day, you're still going to have to put in hours after work to study and learn this information. Because oftentimes if you go to a boot camp, it's going to cram that information, but it's not going to give you everything you need to pass a certification. So even after the boot camp, you'll have to continue learning. But while you're in the boot camp or in the training course, what you'll be doing is learning, preparing for a certification, learning information, maybe doing labs to gain experience. You may be working on a team with a team to do different projects. I've had some great experiences in boot camps because, for one, it helps me build my network and connections and learn something new. But also, I get insight from the instructor that nine times out of 10 has done the things that they're teaching. And so I can ask them questions like, okay, the book is saying this, but what is it really like in the industry if I see this in action? And they can give you their real world experience to help give you the visual and insight of what your experience may be like in the field.
Had to unmute myself. Sorry. Zoom life. So one of the things that I'm hearing too is that means you got to develop good study habits, yes, especially if you're working full time too. And I'd imagine, depending on, especially in IT in general, but depending on which lane of IT you're going to go into, you might have to create new good study habits. And I have a feeling the name of your website is your advice for how to study for IT. Can you want to talk about that?
Yes. So LabEveryday is LabEveryday.com is my website. It's my mindset, especially when I'm working on a certification or learning something new. Because what I found was that when I was not consistent, when I was not dedicated, I would not get the results I would expect or desire. And so when I would lab every day, consistently working on labs, learning something new, growing my skills, I'll get the results that I desire. Now, I may not pass the first time, but if I continue on that journey, I fall off the bike and I get back on, eventually I'm gonna be riding to that level of success that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and so when you say lab, for the people that don't know, can you explain, it's a simulation environment, right? Where you get to practice doing some of this stuff?
Yes, so I wish I could pull up, I guess if you look, let's see. So over here, I have like a server, which is a Windows server, right? And basically in the lab, what you would do is you would work on a router, a switch, a server, code. You go into this environment, and that environment could be right where I'm sitting. This is my lab, honestly. And what I do is I focus on whatever I'm attempting to learn, and that is my lab. And honestly, the lab every day for me came from when I used to rap, because we used to call the booth in the studio that we would go into to rap the lab. So we would be in the lab every day.
Yeah, and this may be a dangerous question to ask because I think this could probably be a whole nother episode. But you mentioned to me yesterday that you used to do music. And
Yes.
do you feel like that experience also kind of was an intro into IT, into technology? Because there's a lot of tech that goes into creating music.
Well, you know, the weird thing is, I think being in tech helped me in music. And the reason why is I was already doing tech before music. And so when I started doing music, I was using a program called Fruity Loops, another program called Reason, and another program called Pro Tools. And so when I would run into issues with my programs, I could troubleshoot them, you know, because of my tech experience. And so a lot of the issues that other people would face, like getting started with a computer and trying to do music and run into issues, those didn't really bother me. I didn't really have that problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting how, especially once you learn more tech stuff, how you see how it sort of bleeds into everything else in life. And there's always a way to use those skills in other ways. Yeah, that's really cool. Let's see what other questions we have. You talked a little bit about finding a mentor, and social media is really beneficial for that. I know you said something about reaching out to people and just cold emailing, cold messaging these people on social media that you may follow. Do you have any other recommendations? Are there meetups? Are there conferences? Are there places that tech people go?
Yes, there's a whole world for IT professionals. You mentioned meetups.com. Let's say you want to learn Python, where there's like a local, like Kansas City Python enthusiast group that meet, I think once a month, every 2 weeks, something like that. I've been to the group. I'm friends with a lot of people in the group, but you can like join these groups, go to the meetups, and then learn something new, ask questions that you may have, and then connect with people. It's a great way to build relationships. Now, there also are conventions and conferences around everything you want to learn. You know, I mentioned cloud engineers with Amazon. They have a conference, but there's local like DevOps days. Google has a conference. You name the organization, there's a conference. When I worked at Cerner, we had a tech conference. There's so many different organizations, and not just with companies, but with people that have these conferences that you can go to get new information on tech and also build your network.
Yeah, I think I live downtown and near the convention center, and I think I've even seen signs for conferences that are about a specific kind of software.
Yep.
There's hundreds of people for one piece of software for a huge conference. So yeah, that's a really, I didn't know about those local meetups, because I've heard about, what are those meetups called where people do like a lot of code at once? There's the word
hackathons.
Because yes. I've heard of those too, where that's a way to not only build your skills, but network too.
Totally, yes. I've done a couple of them. They're fun.
That's cool.
Yes.
Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with everyone?
My final thoughts. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your color. It doesn't matter your background. I know a person, I know multiple people that were felons. You know, they made some bad choices as in their youth, and now that they're adults, they're still a felon, but they have flourishing IT careers. So if you desire to be an IT professional, if you put your mind to it, surround yourself with the right people, surround yourself with the right plan, be dedicated, lab every day, you can be as successful as you want to be.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that is one of the things that I love about the tech world is like you've said very eloquently so many times, of anyone can do it, anyone can get into it. You don't even have to go to college. It's a lot of work to self-teach, but you can do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is really neat about this field, is not only that, but also the growth that is going to be continuing to happen in the tech field. There's always new technology. There's always something new to learn. There's always updates and changes. And so I think that's the other really cool thing about this field, is that after you get a certification, after you learn, there's going to be learning opportunities for the rest of your career. So you're never going to get bored. You're never going to be stagnant in what you're doing. There's always going to be opportunities to continue growing.
Yep. And technology is always changing. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know, because I was thinking earlier when you said something, when you said something about how, tech bled into your music career, I was thinking about that, when I was young, that just wasn't, tech was there, but it was like, oh, it wasn't quite in everything yet. It's in everything now.
Yes, it is.
And so there's going to be there are so many different ways and angles to I think focus a career in tech. And so we really appreciate you sharing this information with us today to help people get started if they want to start. We're going to do 2 quick polls real quick about the program. We just want to see what y'all think about it. So the first one is, did this program help you understand how to become an IT professional? That was our goal today, so we want to see what you think about that. And then the second question is, after watching, are you considering a career in IT still? Maybe you found out that maybe it's not for you, so we just want to hear from you on that. So fill out that poll. In the meantime, thank you again, Dewan, for speaking with us today and answering everyone's questions. For more information about all of our upcoming programs at the Linda Hall Library, you can visit us on our social media platforms or go to our website at lindahall.org, where I also encourage you to sign up for our monthly newsletter. For the parents and teachers that are tuning in today, I hope that you consider supporting the library through the Linda Hall Library Foundation. Your contributions help make all of our programs possible and freely available. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Dwan, thank you again for speaking with us. And everyone have a wonderful day.